I would say that there really is very little downside to doing coaching because what coaching is at its core is just someone who is going to partner with your brain and you're still the person who's acting on it and helping you think through like, maybe we'll try something here. And if this doesn't work, then next week we're going to be able to adapt. And sometimes when I explain like what's actually happening in coaching, people actually realize that it's not rocket science.
Hey there, Vibers. Welcome to the Vibe with Kai podcast, where we keep it real, we keep it relatable, and we keep it a little bit funny as we dive into all things mental health, ADHD, and introversion. My name is Kai. I'm your host, and each week we're going to tackle life struggles with honesty, humor, and a whole lot of heart. So whether you're here for practical advice or a little validation or just a laugh about what life is like as an adult in today's world, listen, you are in the right place. We are not about toxic positivity here. We are all about being genuine to each other and to ourselves. And we're talking about real things. And we want to encourage each other and remind you that you are not alone. With that said, my friends, sit back, relax, and let's vibe through this together and enjoy today's episode of the Vibe with Kai podcast.
Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Vibe with Kai podcast. Today, we are talking about ADHD coaching. What it is, why it works, how it can be a game changer. And I've got the perfect guest to break it all down for us. Joining me is Chris Wang, the co-founder and CEO of Shimmer ADHD Coaching. Chris is in the middle of earning her dual master. Was in the middle of earning her dual masters at UC Berkeley when she was diagnosed with ADHD, and frustrated with the lack of affordable, quality ADHD support. She built Shimmer, and it's become the #1 coaching platform for adults with ADHD. We're going to talk about how ADHD actually works, how it helps beyond just knowing what to do, and what why accountability doesn't have to feel like punishment with everything like that. So if you ever struggled with focus, following through, or just feeling like you're too much, this is the episode for you. With that said, enough of me. I want to welcome our guest, Chris Wang. Hi, Chris.
Thanks for the intro. Big news.
I'm so. Where are you based out of?
I'm in SF, but I'm Canadian, so
I
feel the need to point that out. I'm Canadian, I swear.
I'm really happy that you're here, and I kind of want to like jump right into it and dive into you first and your personal journey. You have this quote about growing up with this constant to this, can't stop this. It's incredibly powerful. Can you share a pivotal moment when you realized that those labels weren't your truth?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think just growing up, I was always like, the too much is basically sums the entire thing up. I always felt like I was too much. I was constantly being told to like, sit down, stop doing this, stop doing that. And I think it really was the ADHD diagnosis. It's sad that it was 28 years after all of the two thises and two that. But when I was diagnosed, it might have not actually been right at the diagnosis. I think it might have actually been when I was reading How to ADHD, Jessica McCabe's newest book. And I was in the car and I was reading and I was listening to her stories. And it might have been one of the first books that I listened to someone else's ADHD story in long form. And it just really blew my mind because I was like, wow, just me too the whole time. And obviously she's super successful right now. And I've come a long way since where I was at 2 years ago. And just that validation, it's unfortunate that it came externally. I think for a lot of folks, that's what it needs to come from the first time, really set in motion. And this was post-diagnosis already when I read her book, but it really set in motion like a slow unraveling of actually maybe I wasn't too much. It was just the expectations that were put onto me, not just as a person who at the time like wasn't perceived to have ADHD, but also as a female, as a Asian girl who's supposed to be quiet, like all of those things. When you layered on, I was just so far away from what people expected me and what people expected me to be.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that because I was also a late diagnosis when it comes to ADHD. And it's funny because when I started looking at resources and just people that were experiencing ADHD, it wasn't a lot of times that I saw people like me out there. I'm for anybody that's listening that can't see me, I am a Black man, right? And there weren't any Black men that I could find that were openly talking about ADHD. And you had just mentioned, being Asian. Is that when you were first diagnosed, did you notice that too? Were you able to see yourself in some of the content that you were, engaging in, or was it just like, hey, I have to do this on my own?
Yeah, it's actually funny. There was only one person who's now actually on the Shimmer team, but her handle was at ADHD Asian girl, and she was on Twitter, and I was like, oh wow, there's another one.
Yeah,
and I remember just being so excited.
Yeah.
And so I guess to answer questions, like, no, there really wasn't anyone. And even I mentioned like Jessica McCabe, if you don't know her, if you have ADHD, you should know her, but she's a white female. And there were, by that time, I know when she started, there was no one who looked like her, which is crazy. And now I would still say that there aren't many Asian creators or folks who are out there who are saying that they have ADHD, but it's definitely getting better. So I think that if anyone has the means or the will to just share your story, because it really just only takes like one person to be, which is what I had to be like, oh wow, yes, there's people out there like me.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoy your content so much, because you're able to talk, you're so personable, when you talk about ADHD, especially when it comes to like ADHD in relationships and things along those lines. So I really do appreciate that. And my audience is mostly female between the ages of 25 to 55. Like that's my demographic. And so when I saw you, I was like, oh, I have to get Chris on, because I know that everybody's going to vibe with you there. I had mentioned this in the intro. So you were pursuing a dual master's degree, which, by the way, that in and of itself, I don't, bless your heart, because I don't know how anybody could do that. But you were in the middle pursuing a double master's degree in business and public health, I believe, right? And then you were diagnosed during that time. How were you able to process all of that? Because even just on its own, like there's so much going on in your life, and then to have this thrown at you as well. How did you process that diagnosis?
Yeah, so it's actually funny. So a point on the dual thing, actually, I was starting to do I got into the MBA, and then I think what happened was they were like, oh, you only need to do 6 extra months and you also get your MPH. I was like, wow, what a great deal. So like, talk about impulsivity. Obviously, it aligned with my goals too, but it wasn't like I was following this program for a super long time or anything like that. Which don't tell Berkeley I said that, obviously.
I won't tell them. I promise.
Yeah, and I think processing the diagnosis, I don't think anyone gets their diagnosis when it's like flowers and sunshine. You're always in not a great spot when you get your diagnosis. So like if they were to just give me the diagnosis when everything was just going the best, I feel like it would be a lot easier.
Sure.
But unfortunately, I mean, it's the same with people who come to us for coaching. Unfortunately, too, it's usually when there's a trigger or when things aren't going the way that you want. So I think that, like, I guess to answer it, like processing, it's a very long journey. I think it goes through waves. So there were moments where I was like, yes, like I have this thing. I'm so happy about it. I'm ecstatic. Like I have a community. I have words for it. And then there's other moments where you just get like flashbacks of being a kid, and you're like, wait a second, like if I knew this, like that wouldn't have happened. That would be different. Like, would I be a doctor? Would I be famous? Like, I don't know, like all these what ifs, and like maybe I would have been like this. So I think it oscillates between the two. And then I've heard from other folks as well. I had less of this, but like just like feeling different emotions and anger and sadness towards like the other people in your life too. Maybe they could have caught on to it. And I think as a Asian kid, I never had that feeling, because I was like, there's no way my parents would ever be the ones to catch on to this. Like, I don't even put that expectation on them.
It's funny you say that, because I often talk about like that very thing about like growing up, because I felt like the signs were there and it was clear as day. And I'm like, how did y'all not see any of this? And then I remind myself, I mean, there is a general ignorance to ADHD where people just don't know, and they'll attribute it to other things, not realizing that ADHD is one of the main factors behind some of the struggles that we had, especially when we were younger. So I think it's very validating, for myself and other people listening, to hear you tell that story, because I feel like that's something that a lot of us, especially adults, go through. And I'm like, man, if I would have got my ADHD diagnosis when I was in high school, I would have been a triple graduate of master's graduate. Like, I would have had all of that, But then I also, to that end, I also remind myself, like, all of that struggle, it made me who I am today. And I'm
totally
proud of who I am today, which is I don't know if I would have been this way if things would have went different. So I want to get into the birth of Shimmer, ADHD coaching, and how that came to be. So you ended up, if I'm not mistaken, you took a leave from your graduate studies to create Shimmer. What was the point for you that made you say, okay, I need to do this right now?
Yeah. So for context, I was in school during like the aftermath of the pandemic. And
right.
when I applied to school, the pandemic didn't exist yet. So I didn't know what I was getting into. And if you went to school during the pandemic, it is impossible for people with ADHD. You're sitting in front of a screen in your room. You can't be around more than 6 people. And a big part of your MBA is supposed to be that community. And we were struggling to get that on top of it. But also it was like the screens and doing lectures are already hard to begin with in real life. But for me, being in front of a screen as well, like I was not paying attention. Straight up not paying attention, no matter how hard I tried. So for me, the leaving school actually wasn't super difficult. I think it would maybe be different if I was in undergrad or if I wasn't paying or something, but I was paying for school. So the moment they hit me with another bill, I was like, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. And as an Asian person too, like dropping out is also like a big thing. And I was like, I just need to accept this L. And so in terms of Shimmer specifically, it actually it wasn't this like beautiful thing that I designed and then it came to life. Like I wish there was like this really pretty story. But what happened was when I was going through this diagnosis, sorry, I'm going to pause.
You're fine.
I don't even know if you can hear it. Often other people can't. So I was like, maybe I can power through.
Oh, it's fine. No, you're fine. You're good. It's not that loud. So it's fine.
Okay. No, it was more like I couldn't power through. Like I could not patch my train of thought.
No, I'm with
like,
you.
I can do it.
I saw it in your eyes. I was like, oh, let's see if she makes it.
Make it through?
Let's see if she makes it, because I know what I'm listening to right now, and she has to be listening to that right now.
Back to our original. So for Shimmer, it wasn't like a very neat packaged thing. Basically, I got diagnosed, and then they said, here's some Adderall, here's 10 milligrams. Let me know when you want more or less. And for me, I was like, hold up. Like, I didn't even say I wanted that yet. Like, what are my options? And I remember, and now I know better, right? It's like, that's just their job. But she was like, well, that's just what I do. And I was like, okay, like, thank you. I'll be back. And so I left. And having grown up Asian and not ever taking Western medication for anything, I had like a huge stigma against medication. I don't anymore, and I've learned so much since then. But at that point, I just wasn't ready for medication, and so I started going down this rabbit hole that everyone has their version of the rabbit hole. But I started looking for behavioral solutions. I read all of Russell Berkeley's stuff. I watched all of Jessica McCabe's YouTube videos, and I stumbled upon coaching, and it felt like it was too good to be true. I was like, this is exactly what I want. I want to build skills. I want to have someone tell me exactly what I need to do. These are all like perceptions of what I had of coaching at the time. So I started interviewing or doing consultation calls with coaches. And it was such a tough process. I remember it was like finding a dentist, which I'm also really bad at. But I just remember I had all these consultation calls. They would all just like say very nice things. And they're all lovely humans. And then I would get like stuck in these email chains afterwards with them. And I couldn't figure out the prices. And by the time I finished talking to like the 6th or the 7th person, I had forgot who the first person was. It was just a really cumbersome process that made me feel even crappier about my ADHD. And it wasn't any of the coaches' faults. Like they were all doing the best that they could. It was just like the system that the coaches sat in and the way that it was currently being done just wasn't working. It was too expensive. And so I guess I have a business mind. So I started thinking like, there must be a solve here. There must be a solution. Why doesn't this exist? There must be some sort of thing that makes this a lot easier, a lot cheaper, and like creates a great time for the coaches as well. And so that was basically the genesis thought. And so I started interviewing coaches and started saying like, okay, well, why is it so expensive? Like, why do you need to do these calls? And so by asking all these whys, which is aligned with one of my ADHD strengths, with this curiosity, I was able to start boiling it down to, okay, actually, these are all solvable things. And they're just solvable with technology, with business, with marketing. And so that was essentially what we first did. I was my first customer. After I interviewed all these coaches, I was like, I want you to be my coach. She started coaching me. And then we started just getting other people also into this funnel. And then we started expanding to more coaches and more members. And then it kind of just snowballed. But it really was just approaching the problem that was in front of me at each stage with a lot of whys, which is funny because when I was a kid, my family will always be like, stop asking why, you know, like my favorite question was like, why? Oh, why? Why do I have to do this? Why is this like this? And it's funny full circle because in this experience, like why was kind of my superpower.
It's amazing because so like what I always enjoy about like the coaching side is seeing how it like mixes into some of the other solutions that people sometimes are given. Like, for example, like when you went, you know, they were like, okay, here's some Adderall, blah, 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 like all this stuff. So like a lot of ADHD solutions, as you had mentioned, focus on medication and therapy. So where does coaching fit into the mix? And do you feel like coaching is an overlooked solution?
Yeah. So now that I'm so deep into this, those three things feel so different, coaching, therapy, and medication. But I remember obviously when you start, everything looks the same and you're like, wait a second, like, how do I choose between these? What do I do? What combinations do I do? But if I were to boil it down, for me, how I look at it is there's this quote. It's like medication is like glasses that helps you see clearer, but doesn't teach you how to read. So I view medications as like the glasses, and then coaching plus therapy, depending on what you need, is like the learning how to read, learning how to walk, getting in the right spot. And so that really narrows it down to coaching and therapy. And many of our members do coaching and therapy. And the way that I segment between coaching and therapy is there is definitely an overlap. So I'm going to oversimplify, but coaching is more future oriented and action oriented. And therapy is more past oriented and like thoughts and emotions. So it's internal.
It. Yeah.
Exactly. So neither one is like better or worse than the other. They have different reasons to be, and they have different use cases. And depending on which part you need to work on, like let's say you just get diagnosed and you're working with your coach on learning more about your brain chemistry and ADHD, and then maybe you're also setting up your life a little bit differently. And then with your therapist, maybe you're working on the thoughts you have about yourself and the stories you tell yourself about yourself because you thought you didn't have ADHD, now you do, and how you want to rewrite those narratives. So those are all things that are really important for a hypothetical person to work on when they get diagnosed with ADHD. And I think the key that is that most normal people don't know all of that. Like, how can you be expected to know all of that, right, when you get diagnosed? And so when you go to a practitioner, they really can only talk about their part of the role that they play.
I'm stealing that glasses analogy because I think that is so brilliant.
So good, right? I definitely didn't invent it.
I'm sitting here and you're talking and I'm like, I'm listening obviously, but I'm like, I'm still on the glasses part. I'm like,
I could tell I left you at the glasses. You did not get that past me, but I was like, I'm still talking because maybe the listeners will come with me.
It's so funny when ADHD people are with ADHD people and we can just see each other's moments and struggles. Like that's so funny. You definitely called
I definitely
me out.
Realized I left you there.
It definitely called me out and you weren't wrong. You're
gonna re-listen to this episode, be like, I wonder what Chris said then.
I'm sure whatever you said was on point. It was great. That's so funny. Like well, you described Shimmer as a quote your ADHD support system, right? There's a lot of coaching services out there. There's a lot of coaches out there. Like, there's one thing I've learned ever since entering the ADHD space is that there's a lot of ADHD coaches, like a lot of people out there. So what makes Shimmer and your approach at Shimmer different than some of the other coaching programs that are available?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say there's probably a few things. So the first one, just simply more logistically, it's not that any one coach is mind-blowingly better than any other coach, but it's the fact that when you come in, we will triage you to the right coach that fits for you. So if you come in, or if I go in, I'm like, hey, it's important to me that I have someone who understands Asian culture. It's important to me that they understand what it's like to be queer. It's important to me that they also are good with entrepreneurs. You could probably find that coach yourself, but being able to just go to one place and have someone find it for you is like the exact dentist problem that I had. Like, I wish dentists would do this. So that's probably like the most, for me, like the most logistical perk. And then the methodology one is a little bit more complicated, I would say, in that unfortunately, the word coach is like not a protected term, so anyone can call themselves a coach. So there are incredible coaches out there, and then there are coaches who are very new. And then there are coaches who are not really practicing coaching within the bounds of coaching. So you can find like a big mix out there in the world. And as a individual, it's very difficult for you to tell the difference, because some coaches are just better at marketing, and some coaches or are not putting any effort into describing what they do, or you just don't know what to look for. So for us, we've done the hard work of essentially validating everyone has the right credentials, everyone has the right training, they're supervised. The coach community is really cool within Shimmer too. They also help each other problem solve. They help each other get through hard times as well. So you know that they're just really supported, and they're practicing a methodology that's rooted in science. The one that it's a loose, I would say, methodology that we designed that fits with the credentialing bodies that are out there. So it's not like we design something completely from scratch that's new. So it's really that, I guess, the certainty that you're getting something that is high quality, that is something that is hard to get out there unless you're very educated about the topic, or you get referred from a friend, or your PCP or psychologist or something.
Sure. I'm glad you brought up the evidence-based side of things, because I feel as though I guess the neuroscience behind ADHD is often misunderstood, right? So could you break down just a little bit, and kind of piggybacking off what you were just talking about, can you break down how Shimmer integrates evidence-based strategies in this like easy to apply way?
So first off, I would say that the way that we defined ADHD coaching, just to set the stage, kind of includes three different things. There's psychoeducation, which is basically like teaching people about ADHD in the brain. And then there's executive functioning coaching, which is helping people with ADHD take ADHD adapted ways to get better at their executive functioning. And then there's the third piece, which is like just traditional life coaching. So helping people have your North Star, set your goals. And those three things together uniquely creates the concept of ADHD coaching, which is why sometimes if you go to someone who only has maybe training in one of those three domains and they call themselves an ADHD coach, some people will just say that like, oh, I have ADHD and I'm a life coach and therefore I'm an ADHD coach. But that's not the same thing. In terms of evidence base, our methodology is based off of definitely the latest in neuroscience in terms of like the psychoeducation for ADHD, but the coaching methodology itself is grounded in behavioral science, positive psychology, and also health and well-being, health psychology. So we work very closely with training schools and of the National Board Health and Wellness Coach, and then also ICF, which is the International Coaching Federation. Use letters so much that you just forget what they mean.
Sure.
But yeah, so I think to summarize, it's that we pull from foundations that have been longstanding, like behavioral science and positive psychology, and then we make sure our coaches are constantly trained in the latest for psychoeducation. So around ADHD in the brain, when new research comes out, they get trained on it. When new articles come out, they get trained on it. So making sure that they're trained on the latest, because ADHD is just evolving and the understanding of it is also evolving as new research comes out. So these are all things that are really important to us, that is frankly really hard to do if you're an individual ADHD coach, and very expensive to do as well, because you have to invest in all of these things, take time away from coaching. So we try to make the lives of our ADHD coaches a little bit easier too, by taking some of this burden and helping packages together and delivering.
Sure. There's a lot of people that I get to talk to on a daily basis on social media, and even in life, that I guess are hesitant to pursue any sort of coaching or therapy or anything like that. They because of the stigma surrounding it in various cultures, in various points of your life. What would you say if somebody's listening right now and they're hesitant about seeking out coaching for their ADHD? What would you say?
I guess it depends on the reason why they're hesitant.
Sure.
You probably hate "it depends" answers.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah. So I think I first want to say that there's no side effects and there's no downsides, but I do think that when you get a bad coach, or an inexperienced coach, that there could be negative side effects, or things that you would need to unlearn later on. So I do think that if you do go to coaching, you should definitely find something that is really reputable and has the right reviews and has the right folks, and scientific backing. But I would say that there really is very little downside to doing coaching, because what coaching is at its core is just someone who is going to partner with your brain, and you're still the person who's acting on it and helping you think through, like, maybe we'll try something here, and if this doesn't work, then next week we're going to be able to adapt. And sometimes when I explain what's actually happening in coaching, people actually realize that it's not rocket science and it's not super complicated. It's just that you didn't do it yourself, and you keep saying that you're going to do it and you don't. And so there's some elements of coaching, even if you don't have a super good coach, that are really valuable, like accountability and validation. And those are all things that are really important in especially a late life diagnosis. So I guess I would say, to sum it up, it's hard to speak for the whole
Speak
industry,
for everyone, Chris. Speak for everybody.
The answer would be so different if it was if someone's hesitant about Shimmer, that would be a very different question. But coaching in general, I do think that you need to do a little bit of homework before hopping into it. But there is so little downside and so much upside.
Yeah.
If you get and you can also tell, I think if it's not working in a few weeks, you don't like your coach, just make sure you don't sign big contracts or anything that is predatory like that. You can always just leave, and all you lost was time.
Right. And that's how Shimmer operates.
Yeah, so we don't sign people up into any sort of contracts. I think you can actually buy a 3-month plan, but then you can just also cancel. So it doesn't, we don't hold you to anything. So you can always leave whenever you want. Yeah. And then we just do ask that people make a mental commitment to try for 3 months, because it takes time to develop the relationship. And we'll check in the first 3 months pretty frequently to make sure that people are in the right space, have the right coach, are feeling good about it, and that they want to be there.
Yeah. Do you feel that you're a content creator? We're both content creators. We both spend time making content online, and I would imagine you also consume a lot of the ADHD content that's online. Do you feel, as a content creator and as a content consumer, that we are headed in the right direction when it comes to ADHD awareness?
I think the direction is correct.
I think I sense some not hesitation, but I sense some how can I phrase this kind of thing, because I can feel that, and I think whatever you're about to say, I think I'm pretty sure I'm going to agree with you, but you can phrase it however you want.
I think the direction is in the right way. I just want to make sure that as we move forward in the right direction, that everyone is being brought along, and it's not just a specific type of person and a specific narrative.
Yeah.
And so I think it's hard because I think that as a person, like a BIPOC person, I think that we're just not used to being loud and taking up space in the same way I think that other communities are. So I think as we move forward, just naturally it's going to look more skewed. And so I think that it's even more important for certain communities to, if you do have the voice and you have the will to like speak for 10 people when other people are only speaking for 2, you know? And so that might encourage other people to do the same. Because I do think that the ADHD space is rapidly moving along. And like even in the startup world, there's constantly more ADHD companies coming up. And I just want to make sure that it's representing everyone.
Sure.
I'm like trying so hard to
I get it.
walk the right words.
No, I 100% feel you there because like I looked in your eyes. I was like, oh, I know what she's trying to do right now. I totally get it. One of the biggest comments that I like, in my comments, I mean some of the challenges I guess that I'll get from people online is sometimes people will say that this whole ADHD conversation that a lot of us are having is a trend, and that people are overdiagnosed, and it's just like oh everybody has ADHD now, kind of thing. What are your thoughts on that? Do you see that as well? Do you hear that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I definitely hear it a lot. I actually just made a post about it yesterday. I was like, if you resonate with these things and you don't have ADHD, like maybe channel your empathy into being like, wow, this must be tough for people who are feeling it all the time, instead of being like, oh, you don't have ADHD, that's not real. So
yes.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think a lot of people feel like everyone has ADHD.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably tough for people to understand. Like I always try to see the other side of things. It's like you see one of the symptoms and you're like, oh, I do that too. It's like really hard. Like some other, I guess, like conditions or things like that, like you just don't feel the symptoms. So it feels a little bit different. I think people just don't understand. It's like the severity of it, the frequency of it, the the amount it impacts our lives is just completely different. And it's hard because they already have this defensive narrative that if you say these things, they're just like, yeah, right, you're just saying that. You just want like an excuse for blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely seeing it, but I don't think it's necessarily like only a bad sign. I think it just means that more and more people are seeing this conversation, and the more people who sees the conversation, like the more hate that things get, right? Like things always get hate. And then that's when you kind of know that something's working, when you haters, you know?
Yes, when the conversation is started and people are chiming in like that, oh yeah, you definitely know. It's like, okay, all right, the word is definitely getting out there. I wanna take a moment to talk and give some insight and I guess some tips and pointers, some kind of like overarching pointers to people, adults with ADHD that might be, listening, being like, okay, all this sounds great, Kai. All this sounds great, Chris. What can I do today when I get off this podcast? What can I do right now? So like, if someone is listening right now that I guess struggling with ADHD and feeling stuck, like not knowing what the next step should be, what is one small step that they can take towards getting the support they need to manage their ADHD?
So I'll give one really little one and one really big one.
Okay. Yeah, break it down, Chris.
Yeah, you can go from the top or you can go from the bottom.
Yeah.
So I'll start with the one you didn't ask, but I think the big one, because it can feel really big to some people, but I think is honestly the most important thing that every ADHDer and probably every person in the world should do. And I think it's so important to have some version of understanding or thinking of like, what is the North Star that you have? Like, what do you want out of life? Like, what would be success for you? Or what do you want out of your next year? Like, if you want to make the time frame less. And sometimes people get so stuck on like, I need to do something and I need to fix something, that they're not thinking about like what they're working towards. And I remember asking this question to our clinical lead when I first met him. I was like, what's like the thing that just happens the most that you wish ADHDers would understand? And he was just saying that like, you need to have a North Star, no matter how close or far that is, because or else you will just say yes to everything. And I resonated with that so much. And I'm like, you need a benchmark to be able to like, okay, this doesn't move me towards my North Star. Like, I'm going to say no. Or like, this does, I'm going to say yes. And so that's actually one of the first things that we get people to do in Shimmer is like set your North Star. And like that can be an overwhelming process. You could set a smaller North Star. It could just be like this week's North Star if you don't want to take a huge one. But I would say starting there, or at least somewhere near the beginning of your process, is so helpful, because or else you'll just get in like all of these negative narratives of like, I'm trying to fix this isn't working, I'm trying to fix that isn't working, and you can easily get caught in like the little things without thinking about the big thing. And then for the little things, this is actually an interesting one. I wasn't gonna say this one, but recently I've only had one post on my Instagram go like viral. And I was actually shocked by this one, so I'll share it because it's somehow super helpful for people. And it is a small thing. There's this concept, and it's called enclothed cognition. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Enclothed cognition.
Enclothed cognition. So the way I start the video is like, oh, did you ever notice that when you change your clothes or you put your makeup on, your like entire mood changes? And basically the concept is like, it's an actual scientific concept that says that when you change your clothes, your like mindset actually shifts. So if you want to go to the gym, you shouldn't think about going to the gym. You should just like get your gym clothes on. And if you feel like, oh, I don't want to go socialize with your friends, but you need to go, if you just like put your makeup on, you'll be like amped to go. And it's not 100% proof, but it is an easy step that you can take that can get you to go towards anything, because the thought of just like putting clothes on or changing whatever outfit is way less work than being like, oh, I gotta like take a bus to go to that place and I gotta socialize with people, and it's like a lot to put on your head. So that actually, it's wild how much feedback I got from people on this, but I definitely do it. And you can take it like even levels but beyond it by like setting your clothes out the night before, or all of those kind of things. But I think the principle is pretty interesting. And some people comment on it. They like wrote their entire like high school thesis or like college thesis on it, on enclothed cognition.
That's amazing. I'm going to be looking more of this up, right? Like
I'm going to send you my video afterwards.
Please do. Please do. You make a lot of content about ADHD and how it affects relationships, right? Which I think is great, because I don't see that conversation happening a lot. What is a common struggle that you see couples having in regards to ADHD, and what can they do about it?
Yeah, there's so many. I actually recently chatted with Dr. Melissa Orlov. She's the founder of ADHD Marriage. And I asked her, because that's literally all she talks about. And one thing you'll notice about me too is like, I feel like I'm just like a middleman for a lot of stuff. I just talk to a lot of experts, a lot of great coaches on our team. That's how I am too. Yeah, so I'm not claiming to be any sort of expert. Yes. I just ask people a lot of questions.
Yeah, you sound like me. I always say I'm not a mental health professional,
yes,
nor do I play one on TV. Like I don't ever pretend. Like I ask the questions that I know people want answers to, because I want answers to.
So I asked Melissa this, and she said that the number one thing is the parent-child dynamic, and that's an outcome, right? There's a lot of things that bring it to there, but she says that once you notice that the non-ADHD partner is kind of parenting you, right? Like nagging you, making sure you got all your stuff, and like treating you like a kid, that is when it's probably gone a little bit too far. And ideally there's like more preventative measures that you can do, because it really impacts your relationship, like in terms of like romance and everything. Like no one wants to be dating their parent or their child.
Right.
So I've looked a lot into this, and I think if I were to leave like one actionable one, person with ADHD, well, one, you for sure need to have a conversation about it and just openly sharing how each person feels. But the person with ADHD needs to just find one thing that you can like fully take ownership over. Let's say it's the laundry or whatever it is that you decide. It probably won't be the laundry, but something, something that you can take full ownership over. And then the person without ADHD needs to give full ownership to that person, needs to understand that like, even if it fails, the person with ADHD needs to feel the consequences themselves. And then that way you can slowly work up to taking ownership over other things in the life, because you can't, it's very difficult. I don't know if you can't, but it's very difficult to have a relationship that's solely one-sided, and it's going to build resentment. And if you're feeling the parent-child dynamic, it's probably already building resentment for both people, because one person feels like, oh, I'm doing all the work, and the other person feels like, oh, I'm just like being nagged and my voice means nothing and like I don't have an opinion in this relationship. So I think that's a good starting point. But the conversation is always step one. I think the open conversation and making sure people understand where each side is coming from.
This is really great. And I hope everybody that's listening, I hope you're listening. I hope you're still not on the glasses analogy. I hope you've been paying attention this whole time because
like,
Chris is
totally
dropping knowledge. I left there. Chris dropped some knowledge today.
I think some people might get stuck in clothed cognition, I would guess.
Actually, some people might be rejoining us right now. Like they're finally caught up to us.
Good thing we have speed up and rewind.
Yes. So Shimmer has been successful, it's still continuing to grow, which is really exciting. And I'm glad that I discovered it, and I definitely want to, spread the awareness about it because I think it's a really great tool that people can utilize. Where does Shimmer go from here? Like this time 5 years from now, where are you looking for Shimmer to get to?
Yeah, that's a good question. I frequently look at 5 years from now. Just kidding. So I think for me, like two shifts that I think are really important and are important for Shimmer to be a part of. So it won't just be Shimmer, obviously. But I think the first one is we're in the middle of this like shift of the neurodiversity paradigm of going from, oh, we're all these like broken people with disabilities to, oh, we're actually full whole people and ADHD is just a part of our identity. And there are things that are going to be struggles and that we'll need accommodations for, but there are also things that are our strengths that we are awesome at, and you should acknowledge this entire thing together. So I think the neurodiversity paradigm is like number one of what in even 5 years, 10 years down the line, like I see Shimmer playing a huge role in terms of like the awareness efforts we do, the events, the free events for the community we do beyond the coaching that we now do like more than one a week. So definitely continuing to push that. And I think the second piece is we really need to shift the burden from the individual to like the entire system. It's not just on the person with ADHD or the neurodivergent person to change. Like it's going to be so hard if we just continue to like even if, for example, an employee, you have coaching, you have the right strategies, and you just have like a dismissive boss who will not be flexible to you because they just don't understand what they can unlock, then you're still stuck. And the only thing you could do is change jobs, and not everyone has the luxury to be able to do that. So I think that the other shift that I want Shimmer to be a part of is like, how do we educate parents, schools, employers, managers, like anyone who's in the system to understand what to do, because they just don't know, like they don't know what to do. They don't know, like we're only like as neurodivergent people only like in the beginning of this like blossoming, that how can they be there as well? So we need to pull more of the weight and pull them along with us and make sure that it doesn't become like a us versus them kind of thing. It's really that like we're creating this neuro-inclusive world together. So I can naturally see just probably infinite permutations of what sort of like offerings that Shimmer can do. And I'm not the type of person who plans like, oh, this is like the exact product and the exact thing that we're going to do. It's more like these are the like missions and like the movements that we're trying to push forward. And as we get there and as we take the next step, we'll know, does that look like more coaching? Does it look like webinars? Does it look like in-person events? I don't know the exact answer to that. But I'm very excited to uncover those things and create those things with other really cool people who are working in the ADHD space.
That's great, because I've only been in the space for a couple of years now, and just the growth that I've seen in the last couple of years, it's a beautiful thing. It's great to see people not only talking about this and having conversations, but a lot of people are just simply like getting the help that they need. Like, and content creators like you and others are validating people's experiences, and giving them options, like Shimmer, to get the help, especially as adults. I can't tell you how many messages I get from people that are like, I was diagnosed when I was 60, 70 years old. Like it's quite fascinating how the growth especially on the social media side, is affecting people's lives, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. So I appreciate the work that you do and the work that Shimmer does. Like, this is really, really exciting. I'm going to include all of the information about
Wait,
Shimmer.
Before you end, where's Vibe with Kai going to be in 5 years?
Ooh, oh, look at that. Oh, man.
Throwing it right back at you.
I know. Oh, man. Where am I going to be in 5 years? Well, in 5 years, I'll be 43. So probably crying on my couch, wondering how I got into my 40s. I don't know. Oh, goodness.
Hey, don't make people in their 40s feel bad.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just like, it's happening. Like, I'm like, oh, gosh. To be honest, it's funny how much my answer to that has shifted, because before the pandemic, like, I didn't have any sort of platform or anything like that. I was just, I work in marketing communications, right? So like that was my goal. Like, I was like, I'm just going to work in marketing communications for the rest of my life and I'll be fine. Like, that's perfectly fine. And then COVID happened and I started getting a platform, and like my plans and goals started to change. And so in 5 years, where exactly I will want to be, I don't know. But I do know, from a grand scheme, I would love to continue to build a platform that people can have their experiences validated on a large scale, and they know that they can, I can at least point them in the right direction of where to go to, whether that's continuing like this podcast or my blog or newsletter or social media content, whatever it may be, whatever pops up. I just want to continue to have a platform that helps as many people as possible. I guess that's the goal.
Yeah, no, I love that so much. And I feel like your answers are like different but the same. It's like, I want to like feel this, and this is my mission. But
you have to feel it out. Yeah, you kind of have to feel it out.
Vibe with Kai.
Yeah, absolutely. No, like, legit. Like, you honestly, we do, because like our parents are like, it was easy for them to set like what's next for their life, like the rest of their life. For us, it's like the world is changing, and it just doesn't work the same way. Our parents worked the same job for 20, 30 years. A lot of us like don't do that. We have worked multiple jobs, have multiple careers, so it's like, what's going on today? Who knows? Your life may change tomorrow in some major way. So we just gotta, like you said, gotta feel the vibes.
Yeah, feel the vibes. Stay flexible.
yeah, and give yourself. I always tell people, and I tell myself, give yourself grace. You're doing the best you can with what you got. And just continue to be a good person to yourself and the people around you, and good things will happen.
Yes.
That's it. That's it. Look at that.
Point to end on.
I know, right? Listen, I know it's not Sunday, but both of us are preaching today, Chris. We're both preaching today. Oh my God. I'm gonna include all of the information about Chris and Shimmer in the description of this podcast, so that way all you have to do is click. And all of the information is there. And if you do end up signing up for Shimmer's services, be like, hey, Kai sent me your way. I listened to your podcast.
I can probably, I'll set up a discount code, actually. I'll just make it vibe. I'll make it Vibe with Kai, all one word.
Ooh, look at that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, send me the details, and I'll definitely, I'll include that in, and I'll send people your way for sure. Because people are always asking, like, where can I go? What can I do? And so to have resources like this is actually really helpful for them. So awesome. Cool. Thank you, Chris, for hanging out with me today. I appreciate it.
This was so fun.
And that's a wrap on this week's episode of the Vibe with Kai podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you found a little bit of comfort in today's episode, and I hope that you're walking away with a little bit of encouragement, and I hope that you laughed a little bit along the way. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like and subscribe and leave a review. Let me know what you thought of the episode. I really want to hear your voice. I want to hear your story. I want to hear all about your journey. Let's keep the conversation going. Make sure you follow me on all of your favorite social media platforms. Follow me on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it may be, at The Vibe with Kai for more tips, more laughs, and more real talk. Remember, my friends, you are not alone on this journey. We are in this together. And until next time, stay kind to yourself, embrace the journey, and keep vibing. I'll catch you next time. Much love. Good vibes.